think before I get stuck into my next question, I'd love you to tell us what regulation is. Like, what does it mean? Yeah.
So, as you can imagine, we're talking patients, we're talking people. There's rules with that. If you kind of think about even the simplest things of, here in the UK, if you want your boiler looked at, you have to get a gas certified engineer to do it. There's regulations around things. When you build a house, there's regulations around, where the plug sockets need to be, how high plug sockets need to be. Now scale that to we're going to be pumping humans full of drugs. There's a lot of regulation there. And you have an overarching regulation that's by a group called ICH, which is a large sort of group of the big regulators. Think your FDA, that's the biggest one everyone knows about in the US. You've got things like the EMA for Europe, you've got the MHRA here in the UK. They all kind of got together and said, right, at least what's that basic foundation? What's that guideline? And they came up with this idea of good clinical practice. And it's almost that idea of, we're not talking perfect clinical practice or great clinical practice, good. What is the foundation that we need to adhere to? So you have a guideline there, and then every country has their own regulatory agency who's responsible for their people, who, again, in the UK, we have the MHRA, who then have their regulations to protect their people. So
Rob, it's to keep us safe. Is that safe to say? It's to
pretty much, yeah. Yeah, that's
so that people aren't kind of dying on clinical trials left, right, and centre.
Yeah, and to be honest, to gatekeep them as well. You can't. It's very blunt, but I always say to people, you can't just go into the UK and jab people in the arm and say, "Oh no, it's fine, it's a clinical trial." you have to present the product, present the trial to the regulators and say, this is what we want to do. This is how we're going to make sure it's safe. This is what we see the benefits are going to be. This is ultimately what we're going to look for. And then those regulators will say, you have given us enough that we are allowing you to bring your trial into our country. And if they say, well, actually, we don't think it's safe enough and you haven't got enough oversight here and you haven't thought about this area enough, go away. But to your point, Cara, a lot of that was the science. It was how rigorous was the science. It wasn't, will the people in the UK who are on this trial have a good time? And I know that sounds really stupid, but that just wasn't the case. And I mentioned that, one of the regulations has just changed. We've had a couple of new ones in the industry. And to give you an idea, the original regulation, it was only on page 9. I was looking at it earlier for this. It was on page 9 that it finally said, basically, needs of the patient. Page 9. The new regulation, it is the number one principle, and it is on page 3. You've got the title, the contents, then that. It is now just a case of this is the number one thing. And this idea of now being the rights and the needs of the patient, the well-being of the patient, the safety of the patient, they're now starting to actually say, look, rather than just developing this trial that's going to say, right, you need to take 20 pills a day and you need to take them before bed or straight as soon as you wake up or whatever it's going to be, they've now sort of done it that they're saying, go to patients and ask them. Go to them. Ask them about it. Say to them, look, how is this going to work? And is it going to be beneficial for people? They're getting patient advocacy groups involved. They're getting charities involved. Just communities involved. And that's really a big, big key part now.